Hi folks, welcome back to Right Talk, production of Tillting and Windmill. My name is Dwight Lilly, your host, and it's Wednesday, January the 28th, 2015. It's been another busy day and week for me here in the Valley of Nye. I got probably a half a dozen items I want to cover in this week's edition here. Some of them I've covered more extensively than others on the blog at Tillting a Windmill on Facebook. But I wanted to hit on this first one because it's been a subject of the news, and although it doesn't have anything to do with Nye County or Pahrump or Southern Nevada directly, indirectly it does, because what it's about is about a guy by the name of Chris Kyle, a Navy SEAL that has been the subject of a recent movie that came out called American Sniper. About a year ago, the wife and I read the book that came out by Chris Kyle. Now, this was before an ugly incident developed, which ended up costing him his life, but I'll go into that in a few minutes in a little bit more detail. Chris was raised in Texas and had strong American values. Patriotism seemed to run through the family. And when he saw what was going on over in Iraq, and it spurred him to go down and join up in the Navy, and I guess he went into the Navy first, and then you go from there to being accepted into the SEAL program. But regardless, Chris Kyle went through the process, went through the Navy SEAL training program, and came out the other end as a Navy SEAL. He also took a course to be a sniper, which not everybody qualifies to be a sniper, but they take the best of the best and give them a chance to prove themselves to that training, and that's what happened to Chris Kyle. He ended up as a sniper. The man spent 4 tours in Iraq, and it seems to me that there's been some scuttlebutt around about was Chris Kyle a hero, or was he just doing what he should have been doing anyway? A highly trained person that anybody that would meet up with one of these SEALs face to face would be at an immediate disadvantage, because they have the training, they operate on autopilot, they operate at a level of proficiency that we just wouldn't have a chance. Nobody really has a chance when they go up against these guys. What Chris accomplished in his 4 tours in Iraq, over 1,000 days, and what was considered, and is ongoing over there, by the way, now, it's what's called the counterinsurgency warfare. And the insurgents are mingled with the population. You don't know who the enemy is. You don't know who you're friends with. And it's a very volatile situation that these American troops were involved in. So Chris was assigned to help defend troops as they were going house to house, clearing out insurgents. And anyway, you can find the information about that either on the internet or by reading the book American Sniper, or by going down to the theater and watching the film. Now, as I watched the film, it hit on most of the areas of the book. Of course, the book is going to go into a lot more detail, but I thought what was particularly grueling was the effect it had on his family. He had a young wife, and as time went on, they ended up with 3 children. He married the woman when he'd already finished his SEALs training and before he'd ever been deployed. So he spent a lot of their early years of marriage deployed over in Iraq. And the toll that had on him and his family, you could just imagine. A lot of people say that 1 tour over there in Iraq was enough to cause a number of mental and emotional problems for the soldiers involved. So you can only imagine a person over there 4 tours of duty. Now during this time, Chris became, and the reason this book came out, and the reason it's even a story, I suppose, is that he's considered the Navy SEALs top sniper. He's had more kills than any other sniper in history. I believe the number they gave was 160, but I believe he has commented that it was in excess of 200, but officially the government awarded him with 160 kills. Now, to go along with that, he had numerous medals, including the Silver Star, which is one of the nation's highest medals of bravery you can receive in a situation like this. So is he a hero? Well, I don't know what else a person could do than to go over and basically save the lives of countless Marines that were deployed and who he was stopped in the dead in their tracks, the people trying to kill them. He was on missions with them where they went door to door. In fact, he helped train many of them on the ground and some of the techniques that he learned while going through his SEAL training, because he really didn't care about these soldiers. But I think what happened after he came back is of particular interest. And when he came back, he was suffering from much of what we hear about on the news: PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, and it's real. It's an injury to the mind, the emotions that you can't see on a body. There's no physical wound, but it just debilitates the people that are suffering from it. And Chris was suffering from it. He had to admit it after counseling sessions. And what he did is he volunteered his own time and his own money to work with veterans that were suffering with this debilitating situation. On one such instance, Chris was helping out a veteran, and they were on a firing range, and this veteran shot and killed Chris Kyle dead. The outpouring of grief and the outpouring of literally millions of Americans over his tragic loss in life can't be underestimated. His memorial service was held at Arlington's Stadium just outside of Dallas, and it was filled with just SEALs that he had served with, Marines that he'd served with, people throughout his career that came to the podium and spoke on his behalf. They then had a funeral procession that went through Waco, because he's buried in a national cemetery down towards Waco. But this parade is unbelievable, because there were literally thousands of people out alongside the highway, on overpasses, with flags saluting this fallen hero as he was headed for his final resting place. And I guess I'm just pretty much amazed that people would question whether this person was a hero or not. To me, everybody that serves as a veteran in the armed services, whether it's as a combat veteran or just behind the scenes as support, they're heroes to me. Because what they've done is they've taken a portion of their life and set it aside in the private sector and joined up in the military to defend my country, my family, myself, my friends, and my neighbors against potential aggressors. Now, I don't agree with every mission. I'm pretty outspoken, in fact, about some of the missions our government requires our military to go on. But I don't hesitate for a second to label these people heroes in my book, because that's what they are. And in Chris Kyle's case in particular, he's a combat hero. The man did the job. He did it with distinction and honor, and he has literally hundreds of people to testify to that. And I'd just like to close out by saying thank you, Chris Kyle, for your service for your sacrifice, and God bless you. I'm going to go on here to the next thing, and I think I'm going to cover it right now because it's coming up this next week, and I wanted to get in the first part of this tape in case some of you guys just turn me off because I'm such an ugly looking character or what have you. But there's a group that's called CASA, C-A-S-A, that's here in the Pahrump Valley. And I believe this is a nationwide program. But what CASA does is it's a court advocate for the kids that are stuck in foster care. And we, at the time this was formed, the group now that has it formed, about 4 or 5 years ago, there was about 100 kids in foster care here in Pahrump. These kids are little kids. They're grade school kids. Some of them may be in high school. But what they all have in common is they didn't up to this point have anybody really fighting for their interests. Now, CASA is a group that got together. They formed the organization, and what they do is they have volunteers. At present, there's about 36 to 40 of them, but I think they started with between 2 and 4. And these volunteers go through a grueling 36-hour training period, all because of their love for children, and they see the need to help these kids out. Here's a typical case, because I have a very good friend that's volunteered for quite a bit for CASA. She's been on, she was on a tape that actually got destroyed. It was going to be one of the programs, but it ended up being broken, I guess you'd say. But anyway, her name's Amy Nelson, and Amy worked with CASA, volunteered on behalf of kids, and some of the stories she told me were just absolutely heart-wrenching. We have nobody. I'm stumbling here today. Anybody who lives around here knows of the alcohol and drug problem that we have in the valley. I mean, it is epidemic. The illicit drugs, the drug dealers, the drug houses, and most of these people that are involved in this lifestyle, I guess you'd say, either have kids going into their problems. They have babies and little ones as they're deep into the drug addictions and dealing, and it's a violent form of lifestyle, and the kids get caught up in it. Tied in with it, the drug abuse and the alcohol abuse, partners, whether they're married, whether they're boyfriend, girlfriend, or what have you, they get in fights. It's called domestic violence, so we hear about it all the time. Such and such was arrested for domestic violence. And in the meantime, at this house, apartment, what have you, where these events are going on, there's little kids there. And so the sheriff gets called, and they comes and decides whether they're going to throw parent in jail or what they're going to do about this. But now we have the children. The children are, if there's no grandparents or nobody readily that they can safely turn the children over, end up in this foster care system that we have. And when they become a member of the foster care fraternity, I guess you would have it, which is not a fraternity anybody would want to belong to, the state steps in and through the community, and they tend to the needs of these children, be it health care, be it making sure they get to school, making sure they have clothing, just all the items. They in a sense go on welfare. Well, somebody has to stick up for the rights of these kids, because there's going to be court hearings where parents are trying to get the kids back, custody of the kids back, where sometimes this is a good idea and sometimes it's a horrible idea, and the children need somebody to represent them, and that's what these CASA members do. Well, the reason I'm covering this today is that February the 7th coming up down at Mountain Falls Golf Course, CASA is having one of its 2 annual fundraisers. Now, CASA gets its funds through corporate donations, through private donations, business donation, people just donating because it has to be funded like any organization does, because somehow they have to get the clothing. They provide clothing for these kids if they need it. They just do a real stand-up job. And the one that's coming up is Mardi Gras night. My wife and I'll be down there along with another friend. but you pay to get in, and it's a night of celebration. And the money that's drawn, I mean, there's going to be door prizes and all that, just like any other fundraiser. But this money goes to this organization. And I want to cover it this week because I think it's pretty important that the community step up to the plate and help this organization continue to serve the needs of the children. Then coming up in March, they have what's called a crab feed. I can't wait for that to come along. And it's a Dungeness crab feed. They bring the crabs down from crab territory up in, I guess, Alaska or out the ocean out there somewhere. But anyway, regardless of where it comes from, it's a great event. I've heard lots of good things about it, lots of good food. And that's going to be in March, and it's going to be at the Nye County Coalition Center, which is the same center where the Christmas, annual holiday Christmas dinner is held, and right up by, sort of by where the school district is up in there. So I urge anybody watching this that lives locally here or is going to be in the area, hey, step up to the plate. Now you can get a hold of CASA at, I'm going to give you these phone numbers here, 775-513-9513 or 775-513-9514. They also have an email at info@ptcasanv.org. But it's probably easier to call them up because that's what I did to get my tickets. And wonderful people down there. They're located right down in the building that's next to the Nevada State Bank building on off High 160 as you enter into Pahrump from Las Vegas side. And you go in there, they're next to where a computer store, they got that little tiny little cubbyhole in there because rent, they try to spend the money on the kids, not a big fancy offices. But anyway, I suggest you give them a shout and go on down and help out the kids. That's enough of that for that right there. Okay, I covered the Chris Kyle story and I covered that. I want to bring up one other item that's came up, and I guess it's a continuing item that's come up, and it's in the Pahrump Valley paper today. I don't know if you can see this or not, but here's the heading, and it just boils my blood here. School district graduation rates drop. Now they're not as bad as they were at one time. At one time back in I guess it was 2012, we had a 56.3% graduation rate. So in other words, about half the kids that start off in grade school end up graduating. That was a horrible number. Well, they got it all the way up to 70% last year in 2013. But guess what? We're back down to 67%. So we're going back the other direction. And not surprising, one of the schools that the state's considering taking over under their state charter schools program is the alternative high school. That's part of the Pahrump School District's, the Nye County School District's efforts to help graduate kids that just don't seem to fit into the regular school design, the regular, but they get a chance to get their high school graduation out of the way and maybe go on to college, but at least have that part of the education and life taken care of. So, what are you going to do here, The schools are under fire from all directions, I guess. They just can't seem to be getting the job done, and it's something that the district, the state, and the community is really going to have to work hard at righting that ship. Okay, going on here. I'm trying to cover all this today. A while back, I exchanged messages back and forth with a guy from the Bureau of Land Management, works for the Bureau of Land Management, which is part of the Department of Interior, the federal government, and he's a ranger. And through conversations back and forth with him, he had read some of what I've written about this and talked about this situation, and I got a copy of it right here. It's and I've brought this up in the past. It's the Draft Resource Management Plan. There's 4 different plans, and Maybe I'll take a bit here and go over what these plans are, because this ties in with previous programs and kind of with what was going on here. Alternative 1 is defined as a continuation of the current management direction contained in the 1998 Las Vegas Resource Management Plan and its amendments and changes since incorporation. This alternative describes the current goals and actions for management of resources and land uses in the planning area. The management direction could also be modified by current laws, regulations, and policies. Alternative 2, emphasize the protection of the planning area's resource values, allowing commodity uses as consistent with current laws, regulations, and policies. Management actions would emphasize resource values such as habitats for wildlife and plant species, including special status species, protection of riparian areas and water quality, preservation of ecologically important areas, maintenance of wilderness characteristics, protection of scientifically important cultural and paleontological sites, access to and development of resources within the planning area could occur with intensive management and mitigation of surface disturbing and disruptive features and activity. Alternative 3 provides opportunities to use and develop resources within the planning area while ensuring resource protection. Alternative 3 would provide continued access to and development of resources with stipulations and mitigation to protect natural and cultural resources. Alternative 3 represents the mix and variety of actions that the BLM believes best resolves the issues and management concerns in considerations of all values and programs, and is thus considered BLM's preferred alternative. Alternative 4 emphasizes opportunity to use and develop resources within the planning area. It would provide for motorized access and commodity protection with minimal restrictions while providing protection of natural and cultural resources to the extent required by law, regulation, and policy. This alternative would largely rely on existing laws, regulations, and policies rather than special management and special designations to protect sensitive resources. So anyway, that's a lot of jargon there, isn't it? But if you really want to find out what the plan is, it's about a 1,600-page document that it has everything you can think of, I guess, that the government's been considering. And by the way, the government does this, I believe, every 20 years. They're mandated to review the areas that they manage and to come up with updated plans. So this isn't something that was just dropped in our lap like I once believed, but it's something that happens about every 20 years. So anyway, so I met this BLM ranger downtown here in Pahrump, and he took me for a ride out into the desert. It's not like the mafia or anything like that. Nobody was going to take me out for some of the comments I made. But he was a nice fella. He lives locally, and he is responsible for about 1 million acres of land to patrol. So we get into California because this was a ride into the California desert, I guess. As you know, in Pahrump here, we're literally right on the California line, so it wasn't that far. And the first thing we did, we pulled off to the right as we were headed west, up into this truck that he has could literally go over the mountain and through the wood. And, you're bouncing around in there and everything, but it's not too bad. He told me that he gets a new truck about every 3 years because I guess they just beat him to death out with his patrolling. And we hadn't gone that many feet into the desert when we come upon these trees that had been literally raped. Some of them had been cut all the way down to the ground, made of mesquite trees, the ground disturbed, an absolutely nightmare. And what it is firewood poachers. They come in the middle of the night and they take these trees that are hundreds of years old and they whack them down and cut them up. And then sometimes you'll see them parked here in Pahrump. I've seen them at the corner of Homestead and and Thousand Air Road, truck there on a periodic basis selling that wood. So I can't believe that this wood that's off the guy's private property, I'm pretty sure it's wood that's been pilfered off of our land. Now, also then going up in up into this area, another thing I noticed: garbage. I mean, people just pull out there and throw their garbage and crap right out into the desert. They don't care. Even though here in Pahrump, literally 10 minutes from most people's houses, there's a county landfill. You could go out, and if you live here, it's free, and you go in there and dump your stuff. But no, these people just feel that they can take it out and dump. They do catch these people. You know, it's funny how it was described to me, because the people will dump their garbage and leave bills, envelopes, stuff like that, with their names and addresses on them, and then they get they get tracked down. And when they're confronted with it, why did you dump it? Here's what this ranger told me. He says, well, they tell you I was just too lazy to go to the dump. Anyway, now this is all critically managed area, if you want to call it anything else. When we got through looking at some of these dump sites and everything, what we did is we crossed back over the highway, and we went into the, I guess it would be the southern part, just south of that highway. And now this is an area where there's no vehicles at all allowed, and there's a good reason for it, because they're trying to keep this in as pristine as condition as they can, and they do provide recreation. There's recreation areas that you can walk to. You can walk around, hike around out there. They just don't want you taking your off-road vehicles in there and tearing up the ground, because what I saw was lots of really deep ruts from vehicles going up through there and spitting out, I guess. And I was told there's people out there racing around out there, and people go out into this area and they have parties, hide down in a gully where it's almost impossible to see anybody. Go out there at nighttime, start a bonfire, have a big drunken brawl party out there, and then they break the bottles and throw them on the ground. Just leave a complete mess. And this is what's talked about when the BLM is talking about managing the area. These rangers go out and they make sure that if somebody's out there abusing the lands out there, that they get stopped. Generally, when they run into somebody, it's somebody that's just lost out there. They're driving. They didn't know they'd crossed into a critical managed area. And in fact, this happened while I was on this ride. The ranger takes his binoculars out and he says, "Oh, there's somebody over there." And lo and behold, there's a quad racing across the desert there. So he drives us over to where this quad's at. And it's a guy about my age, 60s, going on 70 years old. And he wasn't aware that he was out there, wasn't supposed to be out there. And so the ranger basically talked to him for a few minutes, pointed him in the direction of where he can ride. Because on the Nevada side, you can ride out in there like that, but you can't on the California side in that one designated area there. One of the items that he brought up that was just, anybody watched this would have to be upset about, is that we have archaeological sites out in our desert out here. There's people that have lived here for thousands of years, and they've some of their ruins are still out there. Somebody took a rock saw and literally cut out sections of a rock where these ancient drawings are on there, with somebody 1,500 years ago or whatever made drawings of the wildlife or whatever. You've seen these on National Geographic or whatever, but these are supposed to be preserved for, future generations want to see this stuff. And this shows you some of the problems that goes on when just idiots, I don't know what else you can say, they're just plain idiots. They don't care about you, they don't care about me, they don't care about their grandkids, they don't care about anybody. They have these selfish, just selfish people that are the reason that these areas have to be managed like this. It's not the majority of people that's causing the problems. It's a few, but these few do a lot of damage out there. Now, wasn't aware of this because, like most of you, you just drive along the highway and you see the desert. It looks like the desert. What's the government want to manage this area for? Why can't, but regardless of who manages, somebody has to manage it, whether it's the federal government manages it, the state of Nevada manages it. In the case where I was at, the state of California would manage it, or the counties would manage it. Somebody has to manage this area because, frankly, people can't be trusted. They just can't. I'm a big proponent of freedom and liberty. And I've said that. I've wrote about this, and I've said it in other presentations here. There's a responsibility that comes with being free. It's not about being a self-centered SOB. It's about being a responsible person that can take care of your own, and you don't abuse others. See, that's a key ingredient there. It's being able to live free, unencumbered by the government, unencumbered by regulations, whatever. You're a responsible, mature individual, can take care of your own needs, but you don't abuse and step on other people. And that's what these people are doing, is they're abusing all of us. And, and that's why we have rules and laws and regulations in our country, in our state, in our communities, is because people just simply are irresponsible, immature, and they ruin it for the rest of us. So regardless of who ends up managing this lands, they're going to have to be managed. I told as we were writing, I said, well, you know what my position is on this, and what most people, we feel in the state of Nevada that we got the raw end of the deal. That even though, decades and decades ago, way back into the I guess it'd be the 19th century, when our state was formed, and we were awarded certain territories to be state lands, and certain part of the territory was to be federal land in the agreement, that we got screwed. I mean, 85% of Nevada is managed by the federal government, and it's not right. And I told him, I said, we don't have control of our own economic destiny. If somebody wants to come into Pahrump, for example, and needs 1,000 acres to put in some type of plant. Now, I'm not going to go into any details here, but I'm just going to say if. There's no way we can do it because you have to apply to the federal government to get this land released for economic development, and it can take years to do this. Whereas if it was managed by the state and the county, then there could be provisions made to ensure that the land is being properly taken care of, but that it can be put into economic use and benefit the people that live in the state of Nevada. So and he understands that. He understood where I was coming from, and he was taking notes, by the way, as I was remarking. I won't go into any details on that, but it was quite, I tell you, it was an eye-opener for me. I was out there for a couple of hours, maybe more than that, I guess. And he asked me if I wanted to go any further, and I said, no, let's head back to civilization. Because for a guy like me, it was quite a rough jog across the desert. One of the interesting things is that although we entered the desert on the California side, as we came back through that critically managed area in California, we came back into Pahrump, I'm talking the southern frontier territory of Pahrump, because there's a few houses out there, and literally just across the road is California. And one of the houses out there, some of you, if anybody shoots out there, you can go out there and shoot out in the desert. They don't really care if you're out there shooting. There's a guy with a house out there that he does care, and he petitioned the state, he petitioned the federal government, and everybody else, because once again, a bunch of irresponsible people, upset the apple cart. They were shooting their guns, just like I covered in the last week's episode, and the reason why one of our firing ranges here in Pahrump are shutting down. Irresponsible, handling of weapons. When you're shooting at targets, why would your bullets hit the fence of a guy's house. Now this guy's got ricocheting bullets going around his house, and he's not a happy camper about it. But there, you know, see, that's an example of what's going on out there. It's people, and you know they're local people. If you're local here in Pahrump, you probably know some idiot that's doing some of this stuff, and so when you know they do get caught and they get talked to, sometimes people get tickets out there. You know, issued a ticket if they're they're just witnessing the abuse. But I now understand why the area needs to be managed. If you took a ride like I did and go out there, and you'd see the same thing I saw, and I'm pretty sure you'd come up to the same conclusion I did. Okay, that's that issue. My key issue, I don't even know if I'm going to have enough time this week to do this, and it's something that I kind of stumbled upon because I hadn't even thought about it. Like a lot of you out there living here, when the winds start blowing, and by God, we do get wind here in Pahrump, in the valley here, we're in the desert here, it can come blasting in from all directions, but as we get closer to spring now, we're going to start seeing more and more of it coming out of the west, out of the southwest, and that wind kicks up the dust, and I'm telling you, it's bad. I mean, I have allergies, and sometimes it's a day I can't even get out of my chair from the allergies and headaches and, you know, discomfort and having a hard time breathing just from all the dust in the air. And I hadn't thought about this dust until at the commissioners meeting last week. I don't know if I mentioned this last week or not on this program. I don't want to mention it again. Mr. Fanning, who's the Director of Public Works for the county, in his presentation, because each of the department heads, in a sense, get up and give a report if there's something to report on. You know, he basically said we have no money to deal with the dust and everything. It's out there, and we're in violation right now of our EPA agreement that we have with the state of Nevada Air Quality Commission and with the EPA, and nothing's being done about it because there's no money. Well, I got to thinking about this, and I thought, well, I'm going to look into this a little bit further. What do you mean we don't? We're in violation? So I did some search on the internet and came up with a bunch of articles on it, actually, and basically going back to the late '90s up until 2006, when we really had our boom here in building. All of the developers coming in and tearing up the dirt and getting subdivisions ready to be built on was causing a lot of dirt in the air. You know, they measure it in microns, little tiny microns, but when they get into your lungs, they cause you all sorts of problems. And there was so many reports that the EPA got involved. And so after negotiations with the county commissioners and we have our own commission, the Nye County Air Quality Commission, which last met in 2009. Well, as this was all going on, this development and everything, people were getting, reported about. They were causing a mess with the dust kicking up in the air, and they actually, there were hearings on it, and you could be fined for doing this. About that same time, early 2000s, the county had a program that they were chip sealing roads. In fact, the road in front of my property here, where this is being filmed, we got a chip sealed road. When we first bought this house and the outbuildings and the property here, we just had a gravel road that was our street out here, but now it's chip sealed. This is not asphalted type, regular roads that you see in a normal city, but at least it there's no dust kicking up in the air. When the housing bust happened in 2006, going into 2007, the building stopped, and these lots that these developers chewed up and got ready for, they just, nothing got built on them. Well, this is a source of dust that is still blowing up in the air. Now, in order to get the government, the federal government off the backs, the county came up with a voluntary compliance program with the government, in which they they stated that by 2009 they would have the air quality in Pahrump back down into the clean air, the National Clean Air Act that stipulates what our air is supposed to be like, how many particulates are in it, that they would have it back down to that. And apparently they got it back down to that because, like I said, there's not been another one of these meetings since 2009 where they meet with a regular, board of commissioners, and they go over complaints. Well, guess what? I got a complaint, and sort of out of sight, out of mind. I brought this up at the water governors meeting the other day, this week, and that as you know, water is a big issue with me too, as you know, in these programs. While we're talking about how to conserve water and what to do about the water shortages, well, one of the proposals I've heard mentioned more than once is that, well, the average family only uses about 300 gallons of water a day, so that's down to like, eighth of an acre foot of water or something a year, whatever it is. It's a figure, but you just figure it out how many gallons that would be a year. That would save a lot of water, and in our drought situation that's causing some of the problem here. Anyway, it would help mitigate the problem with water shortage. I got to thinking, well, when I bought my place, there's pine trees that go all on three sides on my property. And I didn't think about it when I moved here from Tucson, but those pine trees stop a lot of dirt from blowing into our property, because you can see clouds of dust when it starts blowing out here. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to plant even more trees. So I planted about 28 fruit trees on my property, because I have a private well, and I'm supposed to have the land below me with all the water that's in it. I've got 2.2 acre feet of that water per year that I can use, and it's just the wife and me and the animals. But I've got trees and stuff I'm watering. Now, if they were to limit me to 300 gallons a day of use, then I'd have to let my trees die off, and the vegetation, everything we planted here, just die off, because there wouldn't be any water to water the stuff with. And what does that do? Well, in my further research, there is a lot of particulates and pollution that's taken out of the air by trees and vegetation. I mean, the trees literally eat the stuff out of the air, and some of the big leaves catch the dust, and it gets there before it gets into your lungs. Now, if the state is not going to force the county to do anything about being in violation of the EPA, and the county's not going to do anything because they're saying they're broke, then the only other person that can do anything is the homeowners to do something. And, plant trees. And the trees are going to need water. But this is going to have to be compensated. It's going to have to be considered at any water basin 162 water plant, is that we got to have enough water to keep the vegetation we need to help clean the dang air around here that's still being filled up with dirt from the developers in the past. Now, those developers are never going to build all those houses. That land was disturbed. It's going to remain disturbed. Maybe in 1,000 years, the desert vegetation will eventually grow back to what it was, but it isn't now. And it is causing a mess with my lungs. It's causing a mess with your lungs. Ask yourself this. How many people do you know that have asthma or other respiratory-related diseases? How about allergies? Did you move here and you wondered, well, I must be getting old and that's why I've got more allergies? That has nothing to do with it. You got a lot more pollution here than probably where you moved from. You can't really see these tiny things. They'll irritate your eyes if you go out in the wind and that. But these things are going into your lungs and are causing you a problem. And I would say it's costing lives because of the age demographics of the valley here. There's a lot of retired people here. A lot of people come through here staying in RVs are retired. And so older people have conditions, heart conditions, and other conditions that are, they're not helped by having all this dust they're breathing. So I'm going to hope that this message through this video and I'm going to continue to harp on this issue, gets through to the commissioners and through to the state water engineer, some of the other people, that we need to protect the vegetation we have down here. We need more trees. And when people will decide that they might want to come in and develop a little, I'm sure there's still going to be development going on, because even though we're using all the water that that's being recharged, there's some of these developments are still being approved by the planning board through the water district, and they're going to the commissioners and they're signing it off. Right now down at Mountain Falls, there's I think 58 houses being built down there. But I would like to see is that in any type of development, that whether it be commercial or residential, that there's be a stipulation in there, a hard, fast stipulation, that when you tear up the ground, build that house, build that commercial building, that you're mandated to provide vegetation and trees that will mitigate the effects of dust in this valley. And so that was my big issue today, and I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to be on top of this, and I don't think I really have anything else to talk about today. The key issues I did hit on. There's one thing I'm going to bring up here. I have met with people of the heads of the Pahrump Private Well Owners Association, and we sat down and had a meeting, and they're very much interested in having videos made about the water situation. And I'm not talking about from the propaganda of the state. I'm talking about from research done by some very educated people on this subject of water laws, court cases. Anyway, these video presentations, going to be more than one of them, are going to go in depth about water in the state of Nevada and here in Nye County and Pahrump. And so people that are watching the videos will be educated. Now the first script is being worked on right now, and I hope if everything comes together that we'll be able to sit down and film the first episode in the next week or so. I'd like for this to be shown on local TV, and I've put the word out that I'd like Channel 46 to get back in touch with me. But right now they've got situations down there with the owner of the station with health concerns right now. He's in the hospital, and he okays any type of new programming. But if I can put something together, I'm going to have a program that'll not only be on YouTube here, but we're going to have a program on TV probably once a week after dinner time sometime. And I'm going to bring in guests, and we're going to talk about some of these issues that I've been bringing up on these YouTube, and in particular this water issue. And I'll have people coming in, and I'll ask them questions and let's get the facts out on the table, not the rumors, not the this or that. And I'm going to close out tonight. And for those of you that have stuck with me as I'm learning how to do these videos, I appreciate you stopping by once again. And I'm going to try to get this out, edited tonight as best as I can, and onto the air, posted on Tillting Windmill tomorrow, and on my own Facebook page. And feel free to share, link these around and share them, because I'm trying to bring you the news and the events, in the papers here and that, as I see them. It's just from the peanut gallery, a guy that's sitting out there concerned about the community, concerned about the state, concerned about where we're going in the future, and listening to what people are saying, and then putting it in terms that I think make sense to you and myself. So good evening and have a great week, folks. Bye-bye now.